Good morning and welcome to our webinar, An Introduction to Kobetron's Iris Enterprise System. I'm Megan and I will be introducing today's presenter to you. But first, let's review some housekeeping details so that you know how to best participate in today's webinar. So you should see a little window that looks like this on your computer screen in the upper corner. You can submit your questions at any time during the presentation in the questions pane. Our presenter will do his best to answer your questions as they come in. However, if your question isn't answered live today, somebody will contact you with a response after the webinar, so rest be assured. There's also a handout loaded in the handouts pane if you look on your interface there. It contains additional information on the Iris line of products, so be sure to check that out. The webinar should last about 45 minutes with time at the end to answer any remaining questions that you have. And with that, I am pleased to introduce Kobetron's lead service and support technician, Patrick Parrish, as today's presenter. Patrick brings a unique background to Kobetron that includes 10 years of management and customer service experience, along with 6 years of programming experience. He is a great Kobetron resource. So without further delay, here's Patrick.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about Iris Enterprise and what Iris Enterprise can do for you. So a little bit about Iris Enterprise. As you can see by the slide that we have, it's a system that allows you to monitor revoked components on your floor, but it also does much more than that. It allows you to manage your gaming floor, your EGMs, games, sub-games, components, shufflers, controllers, table games, seals, licenses, and attachments. The other thing that Iris allows you to do is manage all of your workflow for your slot floor. So we can schedule conversions, we have projects that we can put conversions into, we can send out notifications, get approval from the Gaming Commission or different slot tech supervisors, things like that. We can also do checklists and record seals, RAM clears, logic accesses, and any kinds of forms that you guys need to fill out as part of your process. We can create an electronic form called a checklist. So today, what we'll do is we'll go over a little bit about Iris and where Iris gets its data. We'll talk about Iris's layout and navigation. Then we'll talk about the different types of objects that Iris can track. And after that, we'll give a demo of Iris's workflows and all of the different audit tracking that Iris can take care of. So with that, I'll start by showing my screen. So you guys should be able to see this is Iris Enterprise. And this is the main login screen when I first log into Iris. In the left-hand side, this panel here controls all of the navigation, and whatever you have clicked on, you can see in the right-hand panel. So right now, I'm on this Casino Asset Management node, and
Patrick?
Yes?
I don't know if they can see your screen right now. I can just see you.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Let me fix that. Okay, is that better?
We can see it. Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So as I was saying, the left-hand panel here controls the navigation, and I'm on the Casino Asset Management node. In the right-hand side of Iris, whatever is selected in the navigation gets displayed up here in the right-hand panel. So I've got it set up to show me this installed revoked components dashboard, but we can have other dashboards set up here as well. And you can see I've got a couple of different casinos here, Flowing Waters Casino, Rolling Hills Casino, and Valley View Casino. If I expand one of their nodes, we'll see similar nodes to what I've got up here. The only difference between, for example, this EGMs node and this EGMs node is the EGMs node under Flowing Waters is filtered to only show casinos at Flowing Waters, where the EGMs under all properties shows every EGM in the database. So let's talk a little bit about where Iris gets its data. I'm going to click on the EGMs node and load up the tabbed EGM viewer to show you the kind of data that we pull. So Iris connects to your slot system on a daily basis, and it pulls information from your slot system into the Iris database. It's a one-way import, so we don't ever push any changes back to your slot system, but the types of information that we pull out of your slot system are cabinet, game, and location information. So this viewer here shows all of the slot machines that I have in this database, and any one of these columns up here that have an asterisk next to it are fields that we're pulling directly out of the slot system. So we're pulling the asset number, serial number, the game theme, zone, location, the denom, hold, the payback percentages, max lines, max credits, floor address, cabinet model, cabinet style, if it's multi-game, if it's multi-denom. We even have additional fields that we can add so that if you have something that you want to track, Iris can handle that as well. Now, Iris gets its component information from two sources. The first place is GLI, and there's a scheduled job inside of Iris that navigates out to GLI's website and pulls in all of the testing data for the jurisdictions that you have access to. And the BMM import, it does the same thing. It logs in and pulls data right from BMM's database. So all of the component information that's stored in Iris gets pulled in directly from either GLI or BMM's database. And then in order to manage what software that you have installed in your slot machines, Iris handles that through conversions. Megan, let's ask the first question.
Sure, I'm going to launch it right now. Have you ever used any of the Iris line of products? If so, which product have you used? So please select one, Iris Online, Iris Enterprise, or I have not used any of the Iris products. We're going to wait here just a minute to collect the results. And it looks like they're there. I'm going to go ahead and share what we've got. Looks like 74% have not used any of the Iris products, 19% have used Iris Online, and 7% have used Iris Enterprise. Okay,
so one thing to note is that we're demoing Iris Enterprise in this webinar. Iris Online is a different product. It's a website that tracks your slot machines and what components are installed in them. That was formerly known as GLI Cloud, but that's a different system than what we're looking at here. So for everybody who has Iris Online, you'll see what the differences are. And for anybody who doesn't have either one of the Iris products, you can see what Iris can do for you. So let's go into some of the different things that Iris can track. So with this specific EGMs node, we can see all of the different slot machines that are in the database. We've got it tabbed out up here based on their status. So I've got 53 online machines, 1 that's returned, 2 that I've sold, and then I've got a tab that shows all of the statuses. And then underneath that, I've got tabs for all the different workflow states. And we'll cover workflow states a little bit later on in the webinar. But anytime you're looking at a grid of things, whether it's slots, whether it's components or game configurations, Iris uses the same viewer. So we can do things like we can sort based on asset number. If I click on it, it will sort ascending and descending. I can move these columns around. If I want workflow state to come up front and maybe the status next, I can do that. I can shrink the columns around. And the columns that we have displayed up here are based on a per user basis. So I can set my columns up the way I want to see them, and then somebody else can set their columns up a different way, and it's not going to affect either user. I can do things like if I don't want to see the zone, for example, I can click on it and drag it down and it'll go away. If I decide I want to see that column again, I can right-click on here and go to this column chooser, and this has all of the columns that are available for this particular object that we're looking at, and I can scroll down, find zone, and put it back up there. The other thing that you can do in this viewer, you can create default views. So I'm looking at the default view right now. I can create and manage my views. So I've got a demo view that I've set up, and we can see I've got in the demo view I've got the serial number first, then the workflow state and location, and the workflow state's expanded. If I go back to my default view, it'll show what I had set up originally, the workflow state, status, then the asset, serial number, zone. You can have as many of these views as you want. If you want to create a new view, all you do is hit New View, type in the name. I'll just type in Webinar View, hit OK. And then I can go around and make some changes. So I'll put the game theme up front, get rid of the workflow state and the status. Maybe I just want to know the denom, the hold, and the payback percentage. Actually, I removed the payback percentage. But now if I go back to the default view, I can see the data is the way that I had it originally set up. And you can do that in any of the viewers that have a list of items inside of Iris Enterprise. So, one thing to note, the column names up here are all pulled from the database, but we have the ability to make changes to it. So, for example, asset number, I could change that pound sign to the word number. I could change serial number to say SN. It's completely customizable, so however you guys talk about your data, we can replicate that here in Iris Enterprise. I can filter the data with this filter row up at the top. So if I want to see every serial number that starts with 55, I just type in 55, and as I type, it filters the data. So now it's showing 27 out of 42 machines. I can further filter it by looking at the zone. I'll just put in O2, and I can see now I'm down to 9 machines. If I want to stop the filter temporarily, I can uncheck it, and it'll go back. If I put a check back here in this box, it should filter it again. And then if I click this X, it'll completely remove the filter. And one thing to note when we're looking at the tabbed EGM viewer, any record that is highlighted in red has a revoked piece of software in there. So in this particular database, I have about 10 or 15 machines that have revoked software in there so that we can show what it looks like. And if I want to look at one of the slot machines, I just double click on it, and I'll navigate to that EGM record. And now what it'll do is Iris creates a node called Recent EGMs, and the EGM that we're on, this IGT machine, is highlighted. And then in this pane, we see the EGM information. So we've got a header up at the top that we can expand and collapse. So I can collapse it so that we can see all of the different viewers down below. But I'll expand the header for just a second. This header will be unique to the specific object that we're looking at. So in this case, I'm looking at an EGM. I've got serial number, asset number, license number, the game definition that's installed in it, the game type, whether it's ticket in, ticket out, if it has a bill validator, if it's multi-denom, multi-game, if it's a progressive machine. All of this information deals with that particular EGM. I'll minimize the header so that we can see these tabs down here a little bit better. So any object that you're looking at will have its own set of tabs. For the EGM, the first 3 tabs that we have set up deal with the game configuration that's installed in it. So if I click on here, I can see the actual game that's installed in this machine. If there's any sub-games, they'll be under the sub-game tab. This particular EGM has 5 sub-games, and it looks like the sub-games are the same, except except they have different denoms. And then I also have a tab here for attachments, and this attachments tab allows me to attach any kind of file that I want to this game record. So I can attach something to this game, and this particular game can be installed in more than one machine, so that attachment follows the game record. So if I have 10 EGMs that have this game installed in it and I attach a file to it, anytime you look at one of those 10 EGMs, you'll see that attachment under the game's attachment. If I want to attach something to the EGM itself, I can come over here to the Cabinet Attachments tab, and again, I just click on Attach a File, and it will allow me to attach any kind of file that I want. There's no limit to size or file types or anything like that. You could put a 2 GB file on there if you wanted to. The next 3 tabs deal with, one, the progressives. If this machine has a progressive installed, which it does, we'll see it here. If the Components tab will show any of the components that are installed. Right now I've got 4 components that are installed in this machine. 2 of them are revoked, so they're highlighted in red, and the other 2 are approved, so they don't have any highlighting. If I click down here on this Include Removed Components button, it will show anything that's been removed. So right now I have 4 components in this machine. If I click on it, there's 6. So I had ran a conversion in 2016 to remove this component, and in 2017 to remove this component. Iris also allows you to track seals. So if you decide to track seals in Iris, you'll see them here. In this particular example, I have 1 component that's sealed by seal number 9012, and then I have 3 components that are unsealed. And then Iris groups its work inside of projects. So if you have, let's say, a move to floor that you're doing, and you have 10 machines that you're moving out of your storage room to your floor, you can create a project and then assign those EGMs to that project. And any project that this EGM has been a part of, you'll see in this Projects tab. The next tab is the Scheduled Events tab. If I have any work that's scheduled on this machine, it'll show up here. If there is no work, then there won't be a record here. And then the final tab is the History tab. So this is a birth to death record of everything that's happened to this slot machine. And it keeps track of who it was that did the work and what the work was. So I can sort by the day that it was created on. We can see the first thing, there's a machine purchase, and then we had a conversion from the accounting system, and then we ran an install, we ran a conversion, an upgrade, a seal change, and another conversion, another seal change, and we completed an install checklist, ran another conversion, and then we created ran a move checklist. This data here stays in Iris forever. It's a birth to death record. Me, as a super user, I can't even go in and delete any of this data. So do we have any questions at all so far?
We do. Kaylin has a question. Would I be able to log into Iris Enterprise anywhere like I can with Iris Online?
That's a good question. So Iris Enterprise is installed on your network. So you can log in anywhere that has access to your network. We can install Iris on a Citrix environment, and if we do that, then you could log in anywhere that you have an internet connection. You'd log into the Citrix environment and then run Iris from there. But in order to log in anywhere, you'd have to put Iris up on a Citrix environment so it would be available through the web. Typically, Iris is installed internally in your network, and then you can only access it from the network. But if you did need that extra feature, we could install Iris through a Citrix environment and have that functionality for you as well. Were there any other questions?
No, not yet. Please feel free, audience, to submit your questions. Patrick's live.
So why don't we ask the next polling question.
Right, I'm launching it here. Do you work for the Casino or Gaming Commission? Please select one, Casino or Gaming Commission. And we're collecting the results right now. Looks like people are still clicking one. Okay, and I'm going to share the results here. Patrick, it looks like 68% of those on this webinar are Gaming Commission and 32% are Casino.
Okay, so Iris can work with both the Gaming Commission and the Casino. We can even set things up so that Iris is installed and people at the Casino have access to log into Iris and people at the Gaming Commission have access to log into Iris. And we set that up so that you can do things like the Casino can schedule work and submit it off to the Gaming Commission for approval, and the Gaming Commission can look at the work and make sure that everything looks right and then approve it, and then from there the Casino can go ahead and complete that work. And as long as you have a user account in Iris, you can log in and take a look at what's going on. So as long as the network can connect from the Gaming Commission and the Casino, we can set that all up so that both parties can be in Iris.
Great,
So,
Patrick. We had two additional questions from Jane, really quick.
Okay.
Jane would like to know, how is information entered or updated in the History tab, and also, did Patrick say even the super user cannot delete history?
Yes. So even the super user can't delete history. I can't even go in and delete any of the history. There's no functionality built into Iris at all to allow me to delete any history. The data gets entered into Iris by running actions on the machines. So if I'll come here to this slot machine and I'll right-click on it, and we'll see a list of actions that pop up. All of these different actions. I'm a super user, so I have access to everything. But we can control these actions based on security roles. So maybe we don't want people to be able to attach things to this EGM. So we could limit that to just super users or just slot techs or whatever. But all of these actions, when we run them, it will, once the action's completed, it will create a record in the history. And towards the end of the webinar, what we're going to do is create a project, put some EGMs in the project, and go through and schedule and complete a conversion. And when we do that, we'll be able to see the history as I add or as I do things to the machines. We'll be able to see the history move around. So we'll do that in just a little bit. I'm going to move on to some of the other items that Iris can keep track of, and then we'll start demoing work inside of Iris. So each one of these tabs here, or each one of these nodes, has a different set of viewers that you can see. So if I go to Components and Lab Reports, this will show all of the component data that came in from GLI and BMM, and we have a few tabs up here. The first tab that's loading right now is the GLI reports, and these are all the report data that GLI has in your jurisdiction. And as you can see, I've got about 21,000 lab reports that are loading up from GLI. And so this data comes directly from GLI's database. Anything that's a tested component that's in your jurisdiction, Iris will download the report, and it'll also download the component information. This tab here, the BMM reports, it's the exact same thing. It's just the reports from BMM. So if I click on here, we'll see in this database I've got about 42,000 approved records from BMM. And then these three tabs right here show the component records. So I can click on all components and or the installed components. I'm going to click on installed components because it's going to take a little bit, it's going to load a little bit quicker. I've got about 143 components installed in EGMs. So what this tab, or what this viewer does, it breaks down the components based on their approval status, and this is the status that comes directly from BMM and GLI. I've got 134 approved components installed in machines, 3 components that are revoked that are installed in machines, 4 that are non-mandatory upgrade, and anything that's non-mandatory upgrade is highlighted in yellow. And then if I go to all statuses, it shows all 143. If I click on all components, it'll show every component record in the database. And in this particular database, I've got about 44,000 components. And I've got it set up so I have paging turned on. So I'm showing about 21 records per page. And there are 1,000 records per page. I'm on page 21, and there's 45 pages to go through. And we've got this set up just so it's loading 1,000 at a time. I can come here and say, oh, I only want to see 50 at a time, and it makes the loading process go quicker. This detailed list shows a list of all the components that have ever been in a machine. So anything in this Installed Components tab will show up here because they're currently in the machine, but also if I had a component that I installed and then later on it was revoked and I removed it, we would still see this here because at one point in time it was in a machine. Now I'll click on the Games tab. This is all of the game information that's installed in machines. So the game information is the game name, manufacturer, the denom, the payback percentages, if it's got a progressive percentage that we're pulling in, max lines, max credits, whether it's progressive, whether it's multi-denom, multi-game. All of this information gets pulled in from your slot system as part of the daily import. And if I wanted to, I can double click on one of these games and navigate to it. This particular one I clicked on is installed in 5 machines. So from here, we can see, again, there'll be a header that talks about the game, information about its IGT, the game ID that Iris assigns it as it pulls it in from the slot system, the game name, the payback percentages. If there's any sub-games, they'll show up here. This particular one doesn't have any sub-games. If I've attached anything to it, that would show up here. I don't have anything attached. And then this tab shows all of the EGMs that it's installed in. In this particular record, I've got it installed in 5 different EGMs. The next tab is the progressives. And the progressives get entered into Iris. So you'd come up here on this tab and you'd add a progressive, and what it'll do is it'll bring up an editor that allows you to create this progressive. I'm going to navigate to one right now, so we'll see what it looks like. We've got the description, progressive ID, the casino code. In this particular case, I created it for Valley View Casino, and I don't have a link ID or a link description filled out for this one, but you can fill that out as well. The tiers tab allows you to have as many tiers as you want. In this particular one, I have 3 tiers, level 1, level 3, and level 5. I also have a games tab, which shows all of the EGMs that this particular progressive is installed in. So it's installed in 6 machines. And then if there are any default game configurations that this progressive is configured with, that would show up here. In this particular case, I don't have any default game set up. But if I want to add tiers, I can right-click on here and edit the progressive. And I can add a tier, and it brings up this editor. I'll just give it the name demo for the description. I'll give it level 2 and a base value of $1,500. And then I'll hit save. And now we can see that it's here, base level 2. If I hit finish, that'll now, when this reloads, it'll show that there's 4 tiers on this progressive. So next, what we'll do is we'll take a look at all of the different types of work that you can do in Iris. So could we pull the third question?
Sure. How do you currently manage the components installed on your slot floor? Through a spreadsheet, inside a slot system, or other? Please select one. All right, the data is coming in here, I see. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds. Alrighty. And I'm going to close the poll here and share the results. So it looks like it's pretty split, Patrick. 32% managed through a spreadsheet, 28% inside a slot system, and 40% other. And we'd be curious to know what other is, so please, in the questions pane, if you would write what the other is, then I can read those off to Patrick.
All right, so that's interesting. I know typically there's a lot of spreadsheets out there that people use to keep track of their slot floor, and what Iris is good at doing is it pulls the data directly from GLI and BMM, so we eliminate any issues with having a typo, for example, on a spreadsheet column, or maybe there's some dashes that are removed and GLI has the dashes in the program ID, or a 1 gets typoed in as an L or something like that. Since Iris pulls the component information directly from BMM and GLI, there isn't any of that fat fingering typos of any of the program IDs or anything like that when you're scheduling and completing conversions. So what we're going to do next is we're going to grab a couple of machines and we're going to put them into a project, and we're going to schedule and complete a conversion and show you how Iris handles the components.
Patrick, it looks like some people are using an old version of Iris for managing.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, this is one of the newest builds of Iris Enterprise. So if you do have Iris, your system might look a little bit different than this, and also with how customizable the configuration in Iris is, your system might look different just because I have mine customized a little bit differently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some machines from Flowing Waters Casino. I'll just grab 4 of them, and I'm going to schedule a conversion. So I'll right-click on here, and up here at the top we have this active actions, and this list of actions here apply to anything that's in a workflow state of active. So we can see all 4 of the machines that I have selected are active. So I'm just going to schedule a conversion, and what Iris will do is ask me, it'll show me a couple of projects that I've already had conversions scheduled with. Do I want to use these? I'm going to say no. I'm going to create a new project, give it a name. I'll just call it webinar project and hit create. So Iris will create that project and navigate to the project, and then it'll bring up the advanced slot conversion editor. And the advanced slot conversion editor is where we do most of the work on the slot machines. So I'll minimize this a little bit. So up here at the top is the component editor. So any component changes that get made to these machines happen up here at the top. And then down here at the bottom, these are all of the different fields on the EGM that we can change. Any one of these conversion actions can be customized. So let's say you don't want the zone and the floor address and the location to show up for some reason. We can hide those. We could make those read-only. We can make those so you have to change them before you can complete the conversion. And some places they leave these blank. They don't even touch them because this data gets pulled in from your slot system. So Iris will, if it has a change, let's say this asset number down here is going to change. You can ignore that change inside of Iris, and when the import happens in the morning, Iris will automatically create a conversion and change that asset number for you. We've got it set up so that you can let the slot system make the changes for you, or you can come in here and make the changes in case you need to schedule something and get approval before you can put it into the slot system. You can schedule everything in Iris and send out a notification, and they can see all the changes that you plan on doing and then approve it before you put it in the slot system. Up here at the top is where we do all the component changes. So this final components list lists all of the components that are currently installed in the machine. When we finish this conversion, that'll be the list that's installed. Right now I have all 4 of the slot machines selected. So there's 2 components that are that are common amongst all 4 of these machines. If I click on just one of them, it'll show that I've actually got 5 components installed in this machine. See, 6 components installed in this machine, and this one actually has a revoked piece of software in it. And then down here I've got 7, and in this machine I have 7. So if I want to remove a component, let's say I have this revoked software, I'm going to remove it. I'll double click on it, and it shows down here that this component is being removed. And if I want to find a replacement for it, I can, this set of columns here is a list of every component record that's in the database, and you can start by typing in the manufacturer. I'll just type in IGT, and it starts to filter. And if I go to the program ID column, I'm going to try getting this game 014-005 on here. So as I type, it'll start filtering. 0, 0. Nope. So the more I type, the more it filters until I say, oh, yep, it's this one. We also see the version and position of the component. Once I realize, yep, this is the one I want, I double click on it, and now that particular component will be installed in this machine. I can go to the change summary at any point in time and see what the changes are going to be. So far, all I've done is removed this component and added this component. But if I want to make changes down here in the conversion editor, let's say I want to change all these asset numbers, I'll just do 2536. Anything that's been changed is highlighted, or the text is in blue. And I can even go through and undo those changes by hitting Control and Z to undo them, and Control Y will redo the changes. If I'm changing, let's say, the zone, and these are all going to be zone 1, I can click on this little box here and drag down just like in Excel and make the changes. I can change any one of these fields. If I want to change the progressive, I can click on here. It'll bring up this tool that lets me search through the progressives. Say I want to change it to this Game King. Double click on it, and once this is completed, the component or the progressive will be a Game King. And I can also change the date for what this date's scheduled for. So if I drop down here, I could put it for the 14th, which is this Friday. Now, Iris enforces this date. So if I change the date right now and then hit finish to schedule this conversion, I won't actually be able to complete it until Friday. So I'm going to leave it as today's date. I'll look at the conversion, the summary again, just so we can see I'm changing the asset number, the progressive, and the zone. And in this one, I'm removing a component, I'm adding a component. I can look through here and say, yep, that's what I wanted to schedule. And so now that I'm ready to schedule it, I can come down here and hit the finish button. And 2 things are going to happen. Inside of this project, there's a list of EGMs, and we'll see that the workflow status has changed. They were active, and now they're going to be in a status of conversion scheduled. So from here, I can right-click on here and run actions based on the workflow state. So I can cancel the event, I can complete it, or I can edit it. Before I complete it, I want to show you the scheduled work report. So I'm going to minimize this. So this report here pulls information about what's changing on this machine. Anything that's changing is highlighted in blue. So the asset number used to be 56754 or 45 for this machine. It's going to 2536. And we can see down here if there's any component changes. For this one, I don't have component changes, but there's 1 page for each EGM in this project. So if I go to the next EGM and scroll down, we can see I'm removing this revoked component and I'm adding this component. The other thing that we can do from here is we can right-click on the project and we can send a notification out. And what that'll do is it'll allow you to email this report to a predetermined list of people. So if the casino schedules something and then they need to get approval from the Gaming Commission, they can come here and send a notification and hit this too and decide, okay, it's going to be this person's from the Gaming Commission. And then if you hit finish, it will send out a notification and it'll send an email out to that person with this project. You can type in the body of the email, you can attach things. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. And a project can also have attachments, so we can attach files to a project. We would see that here. What I'm going to do next is complete this conversion. And when I do that, we'll see that it'll go back to a status of online active, and the zone will change because I changed the zone to all of them. I changed a couple other fields too, so we should see those changes. The asset numbers will all change. And this tool, the scheduling and completing of the conversion, that's how Iris keeps track of the components that are installed in machines. So do we have any questions at all from the audience yet?
Yes, we do. Elizabeth asks, are there exception or activity reports to see all changes for all games in a given period?
So Iris has a lot of different reports that you can go and take a look at. We've got a summary report that runs on all of the EGMs, and it'll give you a summary of everything that's ever happened to each one of the EGMs. Iris also, you can build custom reports. So if we go through and if there's a specific report that you want to see, we can build a custom report and set up an action inside of Iris to run that report. But yeah, Iris has a lot of reports. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to go into all of those reports, but that's something that we could set up a demo later on and show you guys as well. What I'm going to do now is navigate to one of these EGMs so I can show you the changes that happened in the history, and then I'll go through and do a couple of things, and we'll see the history build up. So we can see that I scheduled and completed a conversion here. If I want to perform a checklist, I'll perform a RAM clear that has a checklist, and I'll pick the RAM clear checklist just because it's easy to fill out. It's quick. It's a default checklist that's built into Iris. They have questions and then answers that you can select. This one just happens to be radio buttons, but we can have the answers be text boxes, drop-down lists, whatever you guys want it to be. We can set something up for that. So right now it's going to complete this checklist. When I hit next, it'll go on to the actual RAM clear, and it'll just record that I did a RAM clear. I'm going to say I did it for a conversion. We can add more items to this list of reasons, but I'm gonna finish up with this conversion, or this RAM clear for a conversion, and we'll see two more items will show up in the history. So the RAM clear checklist, and then the RAM clear itself. And now if I right click on this machine, I'll perform a logic access, and that has information that I can fill out. So the reason I'm going to say it was a conversion, I'll just type in some text for the comment, and I'll just type in my name, and then hit finish, and it'll record that logic access as well. And I can, if I wanted to complete a checklist, so we can see if I scroll up, I had the last one that I was looking at was the RAM clear, so that's why that was at the top. But if I scroll up, I can see I did a logic access, and I'll run a checklist really quick on here. And I will just do an install checklist. And this checklist is one that's default checklist that was built into Iris, but we can customize a checklist and build it into Iris. So whatever your forms look like, we can add that in here. I'm just going to go through and just hit complete for some of these answers. And as you can see, the more I answer, up at the top it shows the progress. So I'm just going to hit everything completed. Go down here and say yes, complete, yes. And it looks like I happen to pick a little bit longer of a checklist. So instead of finishing everything, I'm going to finalize it. And I'm going to finalize it anyway, even though I didn't answer all the questions. And then I'm going to hit finish down here, which will complete the checklist. So now we can see that I've completed the checklist, and so it keeps track of everything that we've done here in Iris. We're getting towards the end of the webinar, so I want to keep time for any questions that people have. Right now I'll ask if anybody has any questions at all.
Patrick, none additional have come in, but I'm going to watch the pane here to see if anything comes in.
Okay. So while we're waiting, I'll just navigate to some of these things so you can see if you have a question about what happens to one of these items. So if I look at this checklist, this RAM clear checklist, I'll double click on it and navigate to it, and it should bring up the RAM clear checklist that I just did. So this one only had the 3 questions in it and everything passed. If we added more questions to it, that would show up here. This data stays in Iris forever. So again, I don't even have a way of going in and deleting this. So it's a good way to keep track of everything, any forms that you have to fill out. We can set things up so that an action has to do certain things, so we can set it up so you have a checklist that starts before you schedule a conversion, for example. That way it forces people to fill out the form before they schedule things. And it looks like we have a question.
Yes, Todd would like to know what sort of reporting functionality is available for internal auditors.
Okay, so if you wanted to see things, well, I'll navigate back to the EGM that we were looking at and run the EGM summary report on here. It's one of our reports. So this summary report that's being generated shows the history of everything that happened to this machine. It shows the serial number, the asset number, the current floor address, and the cabinet manufacturer. If there's anything that's current is in black text. Anything that it was previously is this grayed out text. So currently it's in zone 1, floor address 010101. Before it was in zone 2, floor address 010101. That was before I completed that conversion today. Same thing with the game theme. I changed the game theme a couple of months, or last month. Before that, it was Flames of Olympus. We have these components that are installed in it, and any seals that we've placed. So I have seal 1501 that this component is sealed with, and this component's unsealed. Before, I had seal number 1500, and these components were sealed with it. And then we can see down here we've got cabinet recent events that have happened. And it looks like we have another question.
Yes, I've actually got 2 for you. So the first one is from Daniel. Is Iris able to do inventory of components?
Yes, Iris is available. We've got a whole component inventory system that that keeps track of wherever you store your components. You can create, they're called bins inside of Iris, but you can call them whatever you want and give them whatever names you want. And you can say, I've got these 5 components in this bin and these 5 components in this bin. And when you actually install a component from a machine, if that component's in more than one bin, it will have a little pop-up that asks you which bin you want to take it from, and then it'll subtract 1 from the inventory. At the end of the webinar, there's going to be some survey questions, and one of the questions deals with the advanced features that Iris Enterprise has, and having a demo of the component bin inventory system is one of those questions, because it's kind of a bigger system, so I don't have enough time to show that today, but Iris does keep track of all of that. What was the other question?
Oh, we've actually got another one too, so okay, I've got 2 here. Jesse says, what redundancy measures are in place in order to ensure that all historical records are never lost, and will we be able to export historical records?
So what we do when we set up the original install of Iris, we set up a backup process. Usually we work with your IT department, and they set up a process to back up the Iris database. It's located on your guys' server, so your IT and database administrators can set up backups just like they would have backing up your slot system, things like that. So we can back up the database. We can take backups of the actual server. So if the server crashed, they can restore that. So there's multiple different ways that we can back up all of the data in Iris in case something happens. The other thing that we do when we install Iris is we install a test system so that we can go through and get people trained on how to use Iris, test different features in Iris, and do all of that in the test system so that we're not actually touching production data, so that we're not creating a bunch of junk historical record in your install of Iris. What was the other question?
So along those same kind of lines, Nick asks, who would have access to the information recorded in Iris outside of the casino or gaming commission for a specific property? How is the information backed up in the system if it were to crash? So you kind of already answered that one.
Yep. And the access is controlled based on your network. So typically what we do is we create an Iris users group that anybody who's going to log into Iris, they have to be a member of that Iris users group so that they can see the Iris database. Iris has its own set of security, so each user account will have its own username and password. So you'll have to have a username and password to log into Iris, and then that person's Windows account will also have to be configured so that it has access to read and write to the Iris database. Without that access, Iris, they won't be able to get onto Iris at all. And Iris is installed internally on your network, so whatever security that your security and network team have in place with firewalls and things like that, all of that will keep the data in Iris safe as well. So everything's set up internally on your network, so there isn't any outside access. In fact, I can't even go in and access the Iris database without having your IT department open up a VPN connection and enable an account for me to be able to get on and access it. Do we have any other questions?
No, nothing additional has come through.
Okay, so it looks like we're just about towards the end of the time for this webinar. So what we can do now, if we want to go to the last slide, if you have any further questions, I'll stop sharing my screen and we can go to the last slide. So if you have any questions with pricing, or have any other follow-up questions that you want to ask, or if you had any questions that we did today that we didn't get to, you can contact myself or Peyton. Our contact information's up here. We'd be happy to give more demos now that you've seen Iris. If you have other questions, we can get on and do personal demos and gear them towards how you guys would be working things in Iris. So yeah, give us a call or shoot us an email, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions that you guys might have.